This talk is about the latest development methodology called LDD that it just came out 2 days ago, and within 2 days I had the most magical WordPress development process that made me a 10x developer with a job offer from Google, Microsoft, SiteGround, Jetpack, WooCommerce, Pantheon, 10up, crowd favorite. All right, I'm just kidding. LDD isn't an actual thing. And I really don't talk like that. My friend asked me what would happen if I got up on stage and got overcome by stage fright. So yes, I make a really bad comedian, but now that I have your attention, let's talk. So what I really want to talk about is Frosted Flakes and orange juice. Okay. So this is incredibly cheesy, but you only have to bear with me for 25 minutes. Okay, so when I say journey, it would make me feel incredible if you could say after me, love the journey. Okay, so when I say journey, you say love the journey. All right, so let's practice. The destination is important. We get paid for the destination, but the journey, yes, is just as important. The journey is where you grow. The journey is where you move from just good enough to mastering your WordPress skill area. The journey is where you develop your superpowers that enable you to run through the wall of your current development level rather than hitting it and giving yourself a concussion, which, by the way, I have actually physically done. Okay, if you're really interested in that story, just ask me afterwards. All right, so in West Philadelphia, born and raised, is where I spent my, okay. All right, so not really West Philadelphia. I'm actually a Jersey girl, Jersey Shore, but I had an interesting childhood financially. All right, my mother hates it when I use the P word. All right, and she just might be watching this live stream, so I'm not going to use it. But it made us resourceful. Okay, when there were no more pennies to count to send me to the corner store for a gallon of milk for our cereal, we used orange juice. Okay, when I was introduced to the computer and how to build web pages, because that's what we called them back then, all right, it was just a web page, and I wanted a computer of my own, I entered a web page contest and won my first computer, a Packard Bell. Okay, it was decent, you know, no gateway. Of course, having the internet was out of the question financially. All right, so I would create web pages just so I'd have something to look at in my beloved Netscape browser. Rest in peace. I would collect dial-up modems just in case, holding out hope, until the AOL CDs appeared at the grocery store. Then I could try to find a time when my mother wasn't using the phone, all right, plug up and pray for a local number that wasn't busy. Okay, until my mother picked up the phone to try to use it, and I got kicked off. Can anybody relate? Anybody? Okay. All right, so when high school came, I would spend every moment that I could in the computer lab. All right, I even regularly, got excuses from gym class. And when the computer lab wasn't open, I was at the library as soon as it opened at 6 a.m. playing Civilization. Okay, imagine my surprise when I was sat down for an intervention, okay, because my mother thought I was leaving the house so early in the morning because of drugs, okay, narcotics, substance abuse. That's what she thought, so I was sat down. She didn't believe that I was going, to school to play on the computer. And then there's the time that I fell in love with the basic go-to command, and I got suspended for writing a program that said not so nice things about each of my classmates. All right, so what does all of this have to do with WordPress development? The destination is important. We get paid for the destination as developers, but the journey is where you grow in your WordPress development skills. My childhood taught me to explore, to seek and find the boundaries and push them as far as I could, to not allow my lack of resources to prevent me from getting the solution I wanted. Remember the orange juice for cereal? It may be a little unconventional, but it wasn't actually that bad. Yes, I ended up being accepted to a computer engineering program, which was great, but the tools I used for learning were forged in my journey to get there. In the journey is where you find yourself moving from just good enough to mastering your WordPress skill area. I learned about this blogging thing in college. Everyone was using movable type. And I remember some other engines like Xanga and LiveJournal. Then came WordPress. 5 minutes? I was still doing client sites by hand with my trusty old text editor. But if they wanted a blog, maybe WordPress would be a good idea. My first full site on WordPress used the earliest version of the first WordPress e-commerce plugin. Painful, painful. My client begged me to never have them use WordPress again. So I spent thousands of dollars flirting with other CMSs for a couple of years, including a proprietary one, but didn't find one that I could marry. By considering and playing with other systems, I learned why WordPress was, most of the time, the best tool for the job I was doing. It wasn't perfect, but at least I could customize it. It's easy to find yourself just regurgitating another article you read about why WordPress or this code style or this development methodology is best without even asking or knowing why or trying anything else. I arrive at some of my best and most creative solutions when we're out of milk and I start seeing the possibilities with the orange juice. The destination is important. We get paid for the destination, but the journey is where you grow. Try other things. Learn why, not just what. Assembling sites was good, and with each new project, I tried to stretch the boundaries and do something I'd never done before. The size of the project or even what I learned didn't really matter, as long as I kept pushing forward. Sometimes I needed a plugin to do something just a little differently. I wasn't confident enough to write my own plugins, so I started looking behind the scenes at the code and tweaking other people's plugins, trying things just to see how they worked. Growing in your craft is not rocket science. It's all about the journey. I used tweaking other people's plugins as a springboard to creating my own. I took a job as a plugin developer to learn more, and I learned the powers of a debugger. I have to admit, it amazes me when I ask other developers how they debug their code, and either they don't or they use print statements. That is just amazing to me. Using a debugger was the single tool that caused me to grow exponentially in my understanding of the WordPress code base. Now, I happen to build WordPress products that power thousands of sites. That's not a lot, but it's a long way from where I came from. And I still have an incredible amount to learn. I see code that I wrote last month and I kind of cringe. Anybody else? When you see old code, it's just like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? The destination is important. We get paid for the destination, but the journey is where you grow. But how do I find the time? Especially when you feel like you're always in over your head or always drowning in work. With each new project, I purpose to learn one new thing. It doesn't matter how big the project is or how big what I learn is. You know, sometimes we compare ourselves to other developers that we see, and we think that, you know, we have to make, leaps and boundaries in what we learn, but sometimes it's just that one new thing per project. Because the journey is important. Just taking a step forward is enough. When I start a new project, it's kind of like going for an early morning run. All right, I just kind of take a breath. You breathe in that breath, that fresh, cool air. All right, and I look around. All right, I'm in the moment. No copying and pasting. I question everything. Why am I doing this way? From the structure of my files, the structure of my code. Seriously, every new project, I question it. It doesn't take forever. It doesn't mean I'm, changing things up all the time, but I'm always asking myself, why am I doing this? Is there a better way? Each project. So you may say, well, doesn't that make you inefficient? No, it makes me purposeful. I learned how to be resourceful a long time ago. So when I'm looking at an API or someone else's code and wonder what they were thinking when they did something the way they did, instead of asking right away, I embrace the journey. I keep searching. Sooner or later, I'll start to do something with that code, and I'll run into the same problem that they ran into, and then I learn why they coded it that way. It's always more satisfying to discover the answer on your own than just take it at their word, because you learn for yourself. You now have experience, and you aren't just regurgitating what someone else told you that they found. You found it yourself, and now you know it to be true. I personally think that a lot of ego tripping could be curbed this way as well. Well, why did they do that? That's dumb. Anybody ever see somebody post that on Twitter or somewhere else? By working with the code yourself, you learn why. Oh. You start learning more empathy instead of just calling someone a bad coder right away. Just give it a minute. I don't know if anybody saw the article, it was a while ago, by Jason Fried, Give It 5 Minutes. And he talked about how he was at a conference and he was speaking, and someone else was on stage, and while they were speaking, he was coming up with rebuttals for every point. And so he approached them afterwards, and they said, just give it 5 minutes. I just finished talking. And so that's something that we can do. Just give it a minute before you try to get someone else to solve your problems. The journey, love the journey, yes, is just as important as the destination. You learn so much about the world around you as you journey through the code looking for your answer. So take it in. Don't shortchange yourself and your process. On a regular basis, I find myself, every time I look at a piece of code, when I open up WordPress and I'm debugging something and I'm going through something, I will actually walk through the code piece by piece, all right? And I always tend to find something that I never saw before, all right? The destination is important. We get paid for the destination, but the journey is where you grow in your WordPress development skills. All right, thank you.